back to a new look TDK. Longer videos, changing style, deeper analysis. Please bear with us while we work out what on earth we're doing. But as long as there's no quiz questions involved, I'm sure I'll be fine.
Alex, name a single Arsenal player.
I blanked, okay? On Saturday, Mr. Graham Potter delivered yet another devastating blow to Arsenal's title hopes. It was actually the first loss in a Premier League game since the 2nd of November for the Gunners, and I was hoping it wouldn't be punished, but Liverpool's first win at the Etihad in a decade on Sunday put them in a commanding 11-point lead and piled on the misery. Let me see if I can copium my way out of this one. Arsenal can make it 8 points behind with 33 to play for with a win against Forest. Title races are never linear, and it is still February, so until it's mathematically impossible, you just keep turning up. But I think at this point we are deluding ourselves to think this is anything other than Liverpool's title to biblically throw away if they do. I think at this point we're playing to avoid a guard of honour at Anfield. Obviously, I have so many thoughts on this season. How do you simultaneously hold the ridiculous injury situation we've had with the stupid mistakes we've made and try and analyse them? How do you hold the Salah all-timer campaign alongside the inexcusable lack of investment and come up with an answer that pleases anyone? Maybe you can't. All that to come in future though, because although we've dropped the ball in many ways this season, if you'll pardon the pun, the West Ham loss was particularly hard to take. You can lose games, we all know, it happens. But when you're facing the same problems over and over again and seem unable to find new solutions, that's when you begin to lose me. And we have a problem. Mikel Arteta's Big Six record has generally been very good. In fact, in his last 18 games against the traditional Big Six, Arsenal haven't lost a single one. One of the big issues in the Emirates but pre-Arteta era was those embarrassing, heavy defeats to the Big Six. But since 2022 or so, that's not really been an issue. The concern now, though, is another thing. And that's our record against the likes of West Ham, Aston Villa, Newcastle, and Fulham. The, with respect, mid to upper mid-table clubs. In all competitions, in our last 6 games against the Hammers, we've won twice, drawn once, and lost 3 times. Last 6 against Fulham, 2 wins, 3 draws, 1 loss. Last 8 against Villa, 2 wins, 1 draw, 5 losses. And last 8 against Newcastle, same record again. 2 wins, 1 draw, 5 losses. New Year's Eve against Fulham, the cup games against Newcastle, that horrible 2-0 against West Ham last season, and now this one, that blimmin' Villa game where I will never get over that Trossard miss. If you've been paying attention, you know that's Arsenal's stumbling block, and there's a common theme at play. So, let's talk the tactical future of Arsenal. Whether it's changing the role of the fullbacks, slowly squeezing the pitch with his duel monsters, or rising to the top of the set-piece rankings, Mikel has consistently shown not only a desire, but a tangible, effective ability to change Arsenal tactically. Fortunately, that much isn't debatable. Sometimes the evolution is too slow, sometimes we go the wrong way, maybe you don't even like the football. But when you look at our points tallies, it's inarguably evolution in generally the right direction, even if it's not yet produced the outcome that we want. But one of the things I haven't yet seen Mikel solve with consistency since it became a problem, by my estimate I think in around late 2023, is a compact, physical, low block. I meant mid-block, I'm an idiot. A team who will sit in that bank of 9 or 10 in about this area of the pitch for large portions of a game, shuffling us side to side as we go about recycling the ball and struggling to penetrate. And this, with a lot of these upper mid-table teams, without necessarily the top quality available to them, is what they do. Now, let's be clear, we've won games against these types of opposition in that time frame too. It's not as simple as team plays mid-block, Arsenal lose. But as I see it in those key games I mentioned where we drop points, the pattern is that teams have spent a lot of time set up like that with some big boys in the middle, to be reductive. We've discussed this problem before on the channel, but we'll be looking at some solutions we haven't looked at. But just quickly, why does this cause Arsenal such an issue? Well, I think it's because we don't have many players, or maybe more accurately, we don't utilise the ones we have, who thrive at receiving the ball inside a block, able to ride that contact and deliver key actions from dangerous positions. As we discussed before, we struggle with converting high turnovers into shots, so when there's broken play, we can't take advantage. I think we're naturally a bit conservative as a team. We lack attacking quality. I think we struggle to vary the tempo at times. We maybe don't switch it quick enough at times, and other things too, some of which we'll come to. Sure, against West Ham, we had 4 key attackers out. But there is a pattern here. And if Mikel, when given the right tools in the market, which is its own conversation entirely, can't fix it, then yeah, I'll begin to have doubts about where we're heading. But Mikel's evolved before, and I'm sure he'll do it again. In this video, we covered what I see as one of Mikel Arteta's fundamental philosophies, a preference for entering the final third in wide areas. The reasons to aim central are self-explanatory, but reasons to go wide include a higher volume of final third entries in less crowded areas, reliable chance creation through cutbacks and crosses, quicker and more effective counter-pressing using the touchline as another defender, more reliable ball retention out there, and so on. And I could be wrong, but I don't think any of that will change anytime soon. It's not to say we'll never go central, as it depends on the game, but you can't tell me, having had a look at this graph that I love rinsing, there isn't a decision aspect to this. So if Mikel's fundamentally wedded to that wide philosophy, then I wonder if there's a dynamic we need to develop. If your answer to the mid-block is focus on going wide, you'll probably get a bit more success in terms of volume of final third entries. But when you do, because it's wide, you have to help yourself by creating some dynamic, space-changing threat from those areas. And right now, I don't think we have enough runners on the outside to be able to do that. Enough guys who, when the time is right, can make that dynamic overlapping run to open up some space centrally for the likes of Martinelli or Saka to devastate. Because of that, we're forced into these small space combination games when we go wide, and then when we're off it, we struggle. We collapse over to one side, everything's to feet, and we can't stretch the pitch. Situation here, ball wide with Ethan Nwaneri. Maybe we can rely on Saka to pull out some freak moment of skill if he was the 1-2v1 here and get us inside, but he can't always do that. Perfect opportunity here for a run on the far side to drag a defender and give Ethan some room to manoeuvre. I'm not digging out Odegaard here, but as we'll discuss later, he's never going to be the guy making that space-creating run there. And look at Timber. Who is the guy making that run there consistently, and what could that do to help as that situation repeats countless times a game? It can't always be Ben White. On the left, we have Trossard wide. And you and I know for a fact there is not one player in the Arsenal squad outside of Kieran Tierney, who is leaving and seemingly Mikel won't use, who would ever be reliably, consistently making that run around the outside to support Trossard and help create some space. We have no problem making that underlapping run, as Miles does here. We have enough of that. It's the overlapping run. Trossard is forced wide, he can't connect inside. West Ham win it back. We don't need to be constantly making that run. I'm not advocating for a return to the Neville brothers bombing on. Sometimes your wide player needs to beat his man. Sometimes the underlapping run is the right run. Sometimes you want to combine. But if the plan against these mid-blocks is go wide, go wide, go wide, then why don't we have the widest variety of tricks to create stuff from there? And this isn't simply a case of get Ben White back and we'll see it. Ben White helps us, but first we simply don't have it on the other side when everyone's fit because he doesn't play Tierney, and Jurrien Timber is going to play on the right as well as Ben. We need other ways of creating it outside of Ben White because games call for it. And it's so bizarre because Mikel knows how useful that run is. Thinking back to last season, there were moments where it was so effective. Against Bournemouth, Saka isolated 1v1 out wide. Out of nowhere comes this ridiculous deep run none of the Bournemouth players have an answer to, creating an easy 2v1 before anyone has the chance to respond. Saka's inside, released with a lovely ball, probably should score. Luton last season, lovely little give and go, running behind to unsettle the defence, chip ball to the back post, header for Jesus, goal. And it's all about the timing of the run. The ball goes wide to Saka here against Wolves. White just sneaks around the back and releases the sprint at the perfect moment. Ball into Trossard, again, probably should score, but no one was getting near that. That's a ball position that would have taken probably 3 minutes to construct with pass, just made off one run. And I do have an issue with the idea that we just can't ask the likes of Calafiori or Miles or Timber or Partey when he plays there to make that run. Maybe it's an athletic capacity issue, but a few sprints a game? Really? It feels at the moment it's Ben White or bust. We can, for example, ask Zinchenko to go wide rather than being another man trying to combine in compacted spaces against West Ham. But Mikel, as always, seems intent on putting players in only the most comfortable situations for them, even though Pep won a title using Zinchenko this way. It feels like another signing will have to fix this. And yes, I do mean another left-back. Joking aside, it doesn't have to be a full-back, but I don't think any of our wingers are best doing that run. I don't think any of our midfielders really suit doing that. And it probably makes the most sense for it to be a full-back, especially considering the futures of Zinchenko and Kivior are up for debate. In terms of who that is, don't know, ask the scouts. But just not having that running in the team doesn't make any sense to me. And if the problem is athleticism, time to fix it in the market. Second, I don't think even his biggest fan, the biggest Martin Odegaard lover in the world, would say that this has been his best campaign for Arsenal, despite the context you want to throw in there about injuries or illness or form or whatever it might be, or babies. 9 goals and assists in 27 appearances this season isn't anything to write home about, and our captain's performances have begun to get tongues wagging and fingers typing. To just give you an idea of how quickly public opinion has changed on Odegaard, check out the comments section on the video I made about him in October. Despite saying I categorically felt he was not holding us back and wanted him in my team, there was an overwhelming shock that I even asked the question, despite the bulk of the video being a resounding positive in his direction. I bet if I made that video now, there'd be a very different response. But to be fair, maybe I'd make a different video. In that video, I discussed his limitations, made it abundantly clear he was still in my plans, but far more importantly, clearly still in Arteta's. But I felt that he needed to adapt his game. Probably all that's changed since then is that desire for him to adapt has got a bit stronger. I'm increasingly of the opinion that Odegaard is of most use to us, especially in these mid-block games, away from zone 14, or in non-tactico speak, the centre of the pitch here. I'd want him far more positionally free to roam. His heat map looking more something like this, I guess. Able to pop into the half spaces both sides, drop out and stay dropped out for periods of games to dictate the tempo when we need it, to push others, including fullbacks, forward, and so on. Out wide on the right with his inventive passing, from deep with through balls or helping to orchestrate the build-up, drifting wide to combine or release, on the left slipping balls into runners, putting balls into the box, and so on. Because where I don't love him, especially in these highly congested games, is frankly where he was most of that West Ham game, stuck in the right half space before arriving into the box in central areas. When receiving with back to goal, I don't think he can quite roll contact in the same way that other midfielders can. He doesn't love turning and driving with the ball. I don't think he quite has that variety of his right foot that when he's pressed to his left, he can deliver something. In these sorts of games, I don't want him where he stood in these screenshots, because there's only one thing he's going to do if the spaces are tight and he receives it. Drop off and try to combine. And it slows us down far too much in these types of games. Odegaard had 89 touches against West Ham, the 4th highest in the team, but created just 0.08 XG and 0.22 expected assists. Being ahead of the ball limits his game to me, especially in these types of games. I want to see his brain, not his limitations. I want him to be behind the ball, playing that first pass, because that's where he can kill you, not the one centrally expected to give us something dynamic like a Musiala or a Wirtz. I want to be abundantly clear where I stand on the captain. He is in my team, but we now have a new talent that has to play, in my opinion, and if given the positions that Odegaard is in these types of games, could make the difference for us. In Ethan Nwaneri, we have a potential answer. Imagine Nwaneri in some of the positions that Odegaard is finding himself in time after time. With his core strength and quality of both feet, how many times could he take that ball on the back foot, dribble and drive? Here, could Odegaard be the one playing the first pass, as we know he can so brilliantly, and Nwaneri be the one receiving? Odegaard playing that eye of the needle suits him, Nwaneri on the half turn suits him, our fullback out wide making the stretching run can help too, as explained earlier. From these sorts of positions, who do we trust as a better ball striker right now? Odegaard skies this, Nwaneri, it's his bread and butter. But you know who I think might be able to find Nwaneri with more consistency and quality in those positions? Odegaard. Imagine, unfortunately, this situation that went viral with Nwaneri instead of Odegaard. It probably plays out very differently. And take one look at the passing network, they're stood in the same place anyway. Another potential redundancy issue. Does Nwaneri have Odegaard's pass appreciation, understanding of triggers, tempo control? No. But he has a bravery, a precocious ball striking, a quality from central areas that I think really would suit these games. I do think Odegaard can become a bit of a scapegoat at times. I think we're asking for something more from the team, a bit more anger in our play, a bit more thrust. We're asking Odegaard to provide it and then getting disappointed when he doesn't. And I don't think that's fair. I do think there's a bit of a role confusion here, and against West Ham, we saw it. And I don't know how this all matches up with Mikel's recent comments about getting him closer to goal. I don't see that working. But I'm a YouTuber, and he's a professional coach, so I'll let him lead on that one. He is also just a bit out of form, and that happens. But regardless, this is about putting players in positions where they thrive. So please, let's do that.
So you're saying you want Odegaard dead?
Yeah. I love football. Right, a few others before we wrap up. Bit of a random one, but something I haven't seen mooted as of yet. Obviously, another way of breaking down any block is through carrying. Quite why we don't see that in this Arsenal team is a little bit confusing to me, but there you go. And in terms of central carrying from deep, I don't think we've seen the half of what Riccardo Calafiori could provide. Mikel very, very rarely asks his first line to carry, i.e. his centre-backs. Never seen it happen regularly. But with so many solid transition control-y dual winners centrally in Rice, Marino, Partey, Saliba, Gabriel, Miles and so on, is there a world where the thrust we're after comes from a Calafiori in that John Stones type role? It feels very un-Mikel, because if you lose the ball in those areas, you're dead. But Calafiori is a very talented carrier who, when he gets going, as we saw at Bologna, can kill you. If I'm being fair, Rice probably thrives at carrying in space that he doesn't really get, and Miles is probably still too young to be trusted to do that carrying through bodies, even though I think he will get there eventually. So Calafiori might be the guy, even if it is initially from wide. More central thrust is needed. I've said thrust way too many times today. And finally, this is more ideological than anything, but Arsenal need to define an attacking identity that isn't Bukayo Saka. And when we do, we'll solve a lot of this. George on the Cannon podcast made a brilliant point to me the other day. He said, we know what an Arteta goalie is. We know what an Arteta defender is. We know what an Arteta midfielder is, mostly. But what is an Arteta forward? And I didn't have an answer, which is mad, because I always do. One of my big frustrations with Mikel is his rigidness with players. It feels like he will never ask anyone to step a single inch out of their comfort zone, unless you're Martinelli or Odegaard, but there we are. But also, weirdly, I feel one of the positives maybe from this season is there is absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind, anywhere in the Arsenal space, what needs to happen this summer. Last year, maybe there was an argument to say, was it maximising Martinelli? Was it seeing if Havertz could keep it up? Was it generating more big chances? Whatever. But the answer now is staring us in the face. Attacking talent. The most tactico of tactico, the most casual of casual, everyone, including the club, knows attacking talent is the answer. So combine those two things, and are we due a ideology change? Is that almost guaranteed? There's a manager who always works to his players' strengths, and a team who seem to be about to drop, hopefully, hundreds of millions on attacking talent. Mikel will adapt to the players because that's who he is. And that's huge. Mikel's weakness here could also be a strength in a new context. And I'm hoping that new attacking identity will flourish. Something at least outside of praying for a miracle with Saka. Something less stale, less predictable, and less susceptible to blimmin' mid-blocks from upper mid-table teams. Every team and coach have their flaws. Every single one, Pep included, as we're seeing. But this is ours. However we get there, Mikel needs to fix this. For now, for the rest of the season, and for the future. Otherwise, it will continue to be a problem, and I'll still be sat here giving unqualified solutions, crying into the wind, forgetting Wenger spent a year at Nagoya Grampus, because I'm not a real fan. My dad was a United fan. Blame him.
If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.